So excited to have you with us today. We will give everyone just a few minutes to pop in from the previous session, and then we will get started. Okay, let's give it one more minute because people are coming in. And I want everybody to find a seat and get cozy. Okay, still a few people popping in. We're going to give it just a few more seconds so everybody has a seat when they get in here. I'm super excited to be in this session with you, and thank you for joining us today. Okay, I think I will go ahead and get started if that's okay with you, Dr. Olson Stewart.
Awesome.
Okay, perfect. Let's go ahead and get started then. Welcome. My name is Dr. Tisha Shipley, and I'm a professor on the early childhood team here at UAGC. I'm sorry. I am the host for this session, Leading with Connection, Building a Cohesive Culture Remotely. So by joining today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC-related materials. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. We will get to those at the end. And also we have enabled live transcriptions. So if you would like to use that, click the Show Transcriptions button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Okay, I'm so excited, and I'm pleased to introduce to you Kelly Olson Stewart. Dr. Olson Stewart is an associate professor in the Division of Education Professions in the Global College of Professional Advancement at the University of Arizona Global Campus. Kelly is co-chair of the Faculty Council and has led the Faculty Wellness Subcommittee as well as the Doctoral Advisory Council. She earned a doctorate of education in educational leadership and innovation with a specialization in curriculum and policy from Arizona State University. She was a middle school teacher, theater director, and cheer coach before she moved to Arizona, shifting to staff development, district administration, and teaching as an adjunct in higher education. Her passion and focus have been working with beginning teachers and developing systems to support retention. Dr. Olson Stewart, thank you so much for being here today. We are all so excited to hear from you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Shipley. Happy to be here. I want to start with a little bit of the why. Like, why this topic, right? So here's my little bulletin board full of beloved colleagues from UAGC. Not all, not everybody could I fit on this slide. But the timeline of my journey, specifically in full-time higher ed over the last 10 years, these faces are people who have really been transformative in my personal and professional life. And honestly, from the moment that Amy Rogers there up in the corner hired me to come to leave K-12 education, and she said, "We're starting a program in curriculum instruction. I know this is your thing. Will you come over and help try to, create curriculum that is robust for our students?" And I was hired and came over. And what started intriguing me very quickly was this idea of, how do you do this in this remote world? How do we possibly create a culture and a space where people feel like they are part of an organization? I led a team of 20 in an office. So I ran into people all the time. We knew about new outfits, new shopping, new shoes, the latest recipe. What are you eating for lunch? Just the all the day-to-day things. And I started really getting intrigued specifically around associate faculty. Like, 90% of our courses are taught by associate faculty. How do we make them to feel part of an organization when they're logging in, oftentimes in their pajamas at night? And so I have had the opportunity to do multiple studies with some funding from UAGC, Ashford, and interviewed, talked to, surveyed associate faculty. What makes you feel like you're part of this organization? And at the time that I was doing a lot of that work, we were meeting together as a group, right? We would meet together for graduations, we would have professional development opportunities together. And so most of the connections that were being built for me personally were happening when we would be in the same space together, that we'd have dinner together, that we would be sitting, elbow to elbow at graduation, that we had an opportunity to really chat. There's a few colleagues that I've never met face to face and that we've just connected, right? And so then you have to make this intentional effort to jump on a Zoom or jump on a phone call or send a text message. And so the idea of what did I learn from talking to associate faculty were really three big ideas. And this idea of they wanted connection, they wanted to know that somebody cared about them, and they wanted to have this a space or somehow to feel like they were part of a community. Oftentimes they're the only associate faculty that they know. They don't know anybody else, and they know like one or two full-time faculty. So I started thinking about that. Now, fast forward, 10 years have gone by. I'm still thinking about this idea of how do we create a cohesive community where people feel connected, cared for, and that they are genuinely part of a community, have decision-making power, have input. And I started thinking, wait a minute, like, how do you even learn potentially how to do this in a fully remote environment? A lot of research has come out post-COVID, since everybody was working in office places that went to their homes and all these organizations tried to do it remotely. But I really started thinking about this more, and I feel bad for all of you who are my friends who've had to hear me talk about this for like the last year, because I've been so nerding out about how to build trust and connection in a fully remote environment, not a hybrid environment, but truly a fully remote environment. I'm like a nerd about like some of the self-help books. Like right now, sitting on my desk, right? I have the Tao of Leadership. Oh, you're probably not able to see that. Yep. Wild Courage. And then I started reading two additional texts. I'm like a Brene Brown nerd as well. So this just came up in my feed and I wanted to share it because it really connects with what we're going to talk about today.
I've heard about your marble jar theory, so I got a jar of marbles.
I saw that.
Could you explain to me your theories?
This is how we teach trust. Where do I get my information? Ellen's in fourth grade, my oldest. She comes home from school. She slides down the door into a heap, sobbing. Oh my God, Ellen, are you okay? Are you hurt? What's going on? Something hard happened. She shared it very confidentially with one or two of her friends. They had told everybody in her class, all 30 kids. Everybody was laughing and pointing and making fun of her. And she said, I will never trust anyone again. And my mind was, damn straight, not a good person. You trust your mama, and that's it. That's not the right thing to do, right? You want a kid who can develop trust with others. So I said, trust is really hard. She said, I don't understand it. I said, trust is the marble jar. Every time you share something with someone that's confidential and they don't share it, they get a marble. When you want to share something really private and personal, you look for a friend whose jar is full of marbles. Do you have any marble jar friends? And she said, Hannah and Lorna. And I said, why? They've got big marble jars that are full. And I said, and this was why. It was crazy. Tell me something they do to earn marbles. Oh, well, like if I get to my tray late at lunch and there's no place to sit, Lorna will scoot over and give me half her seat and I can sit at the table. And then the other day when I had strep throat, Hannah was worried about me. So remember her mom called and said, Hannah's worried about Ellen. Why wasn't she at school? But then the biggest thing that Hannah did was the other day, Oma and Opa, my parents, came to my soccer game and Hannah looked over and goes, oh my God, your Oma and Opa are here. And I said, why was that a big deal? And she goes, because everybody's divorced and remarried. And I've got 4 sets of people and she remembered their names. And what was shocking to me is that Ellen was conveying that these marbles were being earned on these very small. She knew my grandparents' name. She gave me a seat to sit at. She checked on me when I was missing school. Trust is built slowly over time, a marble at a time. And that's how we teach trust to the most senior leaders in Fortune 100 companies. Leaders believe.
Okay, so I want you to be thinking about who your marble jar people are, but then in the organizations that you work, whether that is here at UAGC or in other hybrid or fully remote places, how do the leaders in your organization put the jars, put the marbles into your jar, and so that then when something is needed tomorrow afternoon and they're technically removing a marble, how full is your jar? So is one out of there no big deal, or is it a big deal? So we're going to talk about what the research says. So this is where I've been nerding out. So I have my digital body language book. This was transformative for me because somebody wrote a book about remote cultures. Now, Erica Dhawan does talk about hybrid situations, so I would fast forward through those little sections, but it's a solid text and it's very, very comprehensive about specific strategies, including some actual tests you can take about trust in your organization and like a little guidebook in the back, even that you can follow and check off. And then at the same time, in my nerding out of leadership books, I was reading this book called Shatterproof by Tasha Eurich. And interestingly, right on the front cover is a quote from Brene Brown. So I thought, okay, we're doing good if you can get Brene Brown to comment on your book. But it's this idea that resilience isn't enough in this world of constant chaos. And so we have to create this space around ourselves to be shatterproof. So what you'll see in this presentation is going back and forth kind of between the texts, some resilience pieces. I use resilience theory in my actual dissertation, and so it keeps coming up in doctoral students that I work with. And this idea that it's not just resilience, and so we need some other skills. So finding the courage to emerge from the darkness is exactly what living a shatterproof life is all about. Because without heartbreak, we cannot feel joy. Without failure, we can't know success. And without tragedy, we cannot find transcendence. So in this little talk today, we're going to talk about what are the elements that contribute to an authentic and cohesive culture. We're going to talk about communication practices that enhance engagement and reduce feelings of isolation, because no matter what any of us say, how great it is if you're fully remote, there is a sense of isolation at times during your work. Sometimes that's good, and sometimes you're really looking for that connection. And then what are some steps? What are an action for you to take away to develop some intentional communication practices, revise, enhance, polish some additional ways to connect with people in remote environments? How can we get better? So here's your task. Anytime that this little waterfall image, this is Grand Canyon, I'm in Arizona. Anytime the waterfall image is going to come up, we're going to use that waterfall strategy. Okay, so what I'd love for you to do is you're going to type a response to this question in the chat, and then I'll say the word waterfall, and you'll hit send so that it all comes at once and we can peek at it. So what I'd love for you to think about right now, as you consider a workplace culture, what are the factors that you think shape the expectations, tone, and everyday norms? It doesn't have to be remote, just in any workplace. What are the factors that shape the expectations, tone, and everyday norms? If you'll take a minute and type in the chat, I'll give you a moment. I wish I could hear your keyboards clicking. Whenever you are ready, waterfall. Yeah, so I'm seeing relationships. It comes from leadership, interactions with others, socially, professionally, interactions, connection. Having clear clear mission and goals. Yeah, those water cooler talks, and if you're remote, those really, that's one of the things we're going to talk about that don't really happen. Feeling valued, being heard. Awesome. Thank you for that. All right, let's try one more. If I can get my So, in thinking, for those of you who have worked remote, or maybe you think back, if you're in an office environment and you think back to COVID times, what would you anticipate? What did you feel? What are the challenges in creating a cohesive culture in a fully remote environment? So you're going to type right before you hit send. You're going to type, what are the challenges in creating a cohesive culture in a fully remote environment? Yeah, I see laughter there. So typey, typey. Oh, you're good, Becky. Okay, let's waterfall. What are the challenges? I bet the challenges come quick in your mind because they did in mine. Time, trust. Yes, Becky, we've never met in person. Connection, right? Connection, yes, but not real life connection, always scheduled connection. Lack of respectful communication, unclear expectations. There are no water cooler moments. Yeah, not everybody wants to be involved in team things. Some people choose remote work for that very reason, to stay behind a screen. Tone is hard to interpret in digital communications, like the lack of casual conversations and connections. Yes, time zones. We're going to talk about that. Differing opinions, learning about each other, oh, and how much we have in common outside of work. It is so important. Scheduling, intention. Thank you, everybody. Allie, I see building connections to people. Yeah, not real life. All right, so let's talk about what does the research say. So sort of not surprising, honestly. I kept having to check my own bias here, but remote offices, what are the challenges? It's often fragmented. You get little drops of information. There is diminished trust. Oftentimes, the leaders you may not have ever met in person. That changes the dynamics of the relationship. It just does. The blurred boundaries. When you're fully remote and your office is in your home, it is a blurring of when I'm at work and when I'm at home. And yes, there are absolutely benefits to being able to run a load of laundry in between a meeting. But it also is, oh, I'm going to sit down here right after dinner and I'm just going to respond to these 2 emails, and an hour and a half goes by. And your family's like, what's the benefit of you working remotely again, right? So some of those, the blurring. And the reduced opportunities for informal interaction, which many of you have mentioned. We just don't really know all of the everyday lives. And that's like some of the best things that are happening. Now, many people are friends socially in like using social media, which is great to peek behind the curtain and see what's happening. But it is different when you're not running into each other in the hallway, you're not having conversations, and you're not making, I was thinking when Blake was talking earlier about some of those informal like ways to connect across. It's very challenging. I don't even know what some people do. Like it's been 10 years and I'm still confused about the difference of faculty affairs and academic affairs, honestly. Like there is oftentimes that I reach out, Jesse, you can always ask. Jesse, tell me, who do I go to when I need, right? You all have one of those people. And so just understanding what people do. And so those informal pieces are can be a challenge because we just don't have those. Leaders have not been trained in remote leadership. There is not a text to follow. It's not one of the listed leadership theories that we present to doc students, but perhaps it should be. The idea of how do leaders create a culture and collaboration opportunities for remote employees? That artificial feeling of culture, like we're all in it together team, and yet it doesn't necessarily feel like we're really in it because we're all spread out across the country. And then one of the things that was surprising to me in the literature was this idea that we have never, most remote offices have forgotten to set up norms. So when I would do professional development in a room, I would set up the norms, the expectations, the use of the whiteboards, or the use of our sticky notes right on the walls that we would have people go and do. But we oftentimes have skipped that in remote environments. What are the processes like? What are the expectations for how we use Teams versus Microsoft Outlook versus even Zoom? When are we on video? When are we off video? Sort of just like what is the culture for our tools that we use? We're using all tech-based communication in remote environments. So we are missing all of the nonverbal cues. We don't have body language, and if we do, it's in what is this, 1 by 1 square. We're missing facial expressions unless you are over demonstrative, super smile, super surprise, all of that. You try to talk with your hands so that people can get the sense that you're enthused. Tone has already been mentioned, right? That can be misinterpreted. People are in a hurry, so they send a quick response, and then you read it and you think, oh my gosh, something's wrong. They're mad. Delayed responses, things get buried in emails, and then people take it personally that somebody hasn't responded. Oftentimes, it's just got lost in the shuffle. And then over-reliance on quick replies. Sometimes we're talking about really complex things and we're responding very briefly in a Teams message or in an email as well, which can be a challenge. These are some of the stats. So 70% of communication in remote environments is virtual. 30 emails a day typically you are sending, and you field about 100 of them. 50% of tone is misinterpreted. 50% of tone is misinterpreted. Let's just think about that. So before you send that email, read it one more time. Or do the extra exclamation marks and smiley faces, which actually really do make a difference. When we know that 60 to 80% of nonverbal cues make up face-to-face communication, and we're trying to look at each other on these teeny screens, it can be absolutely misinterpreted. And we're trying to read, like, is Kelly having a bad day, or is her computer freezing? All of those things that you just don't know what's happening. And then they did some studies, and if there was a delay, so if I'm having tech issues while you're trying to listen to me and there's a delay of 1.2 seconds, people's ratings of whether you were attentive, friendly, and disciplined went down just for that delay. And we know the other challenge on Zoom is only one person can talk at a time. In a real conversation, when you're together sitting in a restaurant, you're talking over each other, you're excited, it's very challenging in Zoom because there is this like taking turns like we used to teach our kindergartners. These are some quotes from the book. So what is implicit in body language now has to be explicit in digital body language. So we have to be really intentional with how we write our emails, how we write our instant messages to each other. Now, then it comes back to leadership. Many of you mentioned that is a challenge. There isn't specific training around remote cultures. How do you develop? How do I lead a fully remote environment? So leaders have taken everything that they have learned from all across their work history. They're bringing it with them. It may not land the same. Sarcasm doesn't necessarily land unless you are all on screen and we can laugh together, or if you know that person tends to be sarcastic. Perceptions of trust, lack of authenticity, unclear expectations on communication, and those lack of norms creates uncertainty and distrust. And so when we don't believe that our leaders are being authentic, we can smell it a mile away, and it causes a resistance by the employee to engage or participate because there's a sense of retribution, getting in trouble, that it's not perceived well. So I want you to think about, picture in your mind a really strong leader that you have had. It could be anywhere in your career, a really solid leader who created a culture that you still love. Like when you think about it, it gives you that warm feeling. What are the behaviors or actions that they created? What did they do that supported that positive culture? And this is another activity where you're typey. So what are the behaviors or actions that successful in-person leaders utilize that supported a positive culture? So I'll give you just a minute to type, and then we will share. And waterfall. Yeah, so it made you feel matter. Interested in my work, in my life beyond. Unconditional support, informal check-ins, clear expectations, recognizing hard work, eye contact, smiling, personal, shortened meetings. You felt like you mattered when you were engaged. Compassionate, inclusive. Awesome, thanks. So let's think about this next question then. So another activity for you to think through. What are the behaviors or actions that you have seen that online leaders, how have they supported, if they're like either hybrid or fully remote, what are some actions, behaviors that they have utilized that supported a positive culture? So thinking about our leaders that you have worked with here at UAGC or wherever you are at, what are some of those actions or behaviors? And I'll have you type and then we will just typey. Yeah. And waterfall, some of these will likely be the same. Compassion, yep. So some people are saying it's been a challenge. Empathy, checking in, asking questions. Asking, how do you need support? What does that look like? Compassion, patient, transparent. Yeah, just somebody checking in on you, right? Like the use of Teams for me is like, how are you? What is happening? Are you okay? I know you took the dog to the vet yesterday, that kind of thing. Made you feel like you matter every time. Yeah, Stephanie mentions like when they're looking, they seem to be looking at you rather than looking off to the side and doing additional work. Multitasking is a challenge. Circling back on topics, right? Alexa mentions like they remembered that this was happening and they checked back in. Awesome. Thank you for that. So let me tell you what the research is telling us about what are those practices that leaders can do, and all of us function as leaders. The title piece, like, yes, I mean, I know that we get stuck on all of the title pieces, but the reality is that leaders, we have been here a long time. We are working in this field. And how do we create a culture of trust and connection that is collective with your colleagues, as well as the people who directly support you, and you would consider supervise. So some of the practices that work, norm setting. So tell me how you want me to use the chat. As I've gotten older, for example, I have a really hard time reading a slide, listening to a person, and watching the chat. Like I feel like my brain gets so scattered. So sometimes I just turn the chat off, but then I feel like I'm missing like the side conversation. And so anytime you are running a meeting, if you will just clarify how you want people to participate. Are we unmuting for this? Are we raising our hands? Are we using the chat? Or are we using some combo of that? Totally fine. Just set up what the expectations are. The other piece is making it really clear of what is the agenda and what is the deliverable. What is the goal for the outcome of the meeting? Those micro moments of connection that many of you mentioned. The idea of celebrations, we would do celebrations, right, in our chats, and everybody would put what's happening in their life. Those have been found. The research is clear. They are absolutely essential for developing a culture of connection. Putting somebody in a breakout room to chat about whatever they want to talk about. 2 or 3 people. If you put 6, people will shut down. But if you put 2 or 3 in a room and ask them to talk about a random topic, something that's bringing them joy, what's their sparkle that's happening, those make a difference. And it don't have to be long, but they are important. Human connection. How do you make sure there's equal participation? We have been in meetings where there have been 1 or 2 people talking and everyone else is sitting passively. So developing strategies for how to generate more equal participation, hearing more voices in the room. Reducing the talking head meetings where it's just one person talking and everyone else passively sitting or multitasking. The idea of authenticity, transparency, but not an overuse of the word transparency, actual actions that back up the idea of revealing behind the curtain what is happening. And this idea of an alignment between actions and values, that is a respect that people's schedules, time zones versus last minute requests. So the idea of the marble jar. So if your leaders have filled the jar, right? If our jars are full and there's a last minute request that takes a couple of those marbles out, or an announcement that comes after your working hours and you feel the need to log back in to look at it, or a Friday afternoon request that comes in. If the jar is full, a few of those coming out, fine. But if the jar is empty to start with, that is what creates that culture of cynicism and frustration and anger. And so there are some of these practices that we can help set up the idea that we'll be more successful. Let's prioritize work life, understanding that you should be taking care of yourself. Like we push wellness, wellness, wellness. The research is so clear on this that those organizations that encourage walking meetings, why can't you be on Zoom and still walking and you're listening in your AirPods? Get out of your house, sit at a coffee shop. Yes, we have families that we have to care for, and sometimes the meetings conflict with that. That's okay, right? But if we make comments about that people feel like they are not permission to be in their carpool lane and participating in a meeting, that causes challenges. Or could someone else attend the meeting who doesn't have to be in the carpool during that time and cover for each other? So like prioritizing what are the most important things that we're getting out of this meeting? How long do those meetings have to be? Who should be in the room? And being mindful of the amount of time that you're asking people to sit in meetings. So perhaps the max for most meetings is 45 minutes. And so that gives people a chunk of time before they go on to their next one. Thinking about opportunities for feedback. So is this meeting structure working for you? Asking that regularly. How can we make it better? Using the surveys, data, and the feedback to make changes. Thinking about the time of meetings that would work for the majority of time zones. So usually it's that small block right in the middle, in order to not stress out people who are on the East Coast when we're working with a time zone on the West Coast. Even the idea of norming who we copy on a CC email. So when you are getting an email that you're CC'd on, is that a collective understanding of when you're CC'd, you don't necessarily have to do anything, somebody just wanted to inform you? And does that feel okay to you? If your supervisor is CC'd, do we understand that there's positive intent behind that? And that's okay, that's just so that everybody's on the same page? Or does that feel prickly? Some of that is the marbles in the jar. And then this idea of discouraging multitasking. So if meetings are short, succinct, clear, focused, and that you have an understanding of why you are at this particular meeting and what the deliverable is in a condensed time frame, there's less opportunity and less interest in multitasking because you want to get the information and get out so you can get back to teaching, essentially, for those of us here. Just a thought. So email, like what norming email. So you see my little guy down at the corner, he's the strategy stealer. So these are ideas that you may be able to take and steal or think about. Does the hierarchy matter in an email? Who is copied or added to an email that makes you feel fine about it? Who is copied or CC'd that you're not okay with? And what about the BCC, the blind copy? Are we using that, not using that, and how does that feel? So this idea of a transparent culture, just setting up expectations. What is the environment for what is the culture? Is it informal or formal? So do I say Dr. Shipley or do I say, hey, Tisha, is that okay? So, and do I say, hey, Blake, or do I say, hey, Dr. Naughton? So just collectively, what is the expectation on how we communicate with each other? Timing. What's the norm for the amount of time that you respond to, it takes to respond to an email? 24 hours, 48 hours, what does that look and sound like? We just have to collectively decide. A read receipt doesn't mean the Outlook read that you tell someone has read it, but just the acknowledgement of like, hey, Stephanie, I saw that email. I'm going to get back to you on that so that you know that it was received. Even setting up the expectations for what's in that subject line. Is this a to-do? Is this what is that? I just forgot what the acronym NNRT. Not, all the kids with their acronyms. But if we can collectively set up the expectations, oh, no need to respond today. So if you can create an acronym bank, of course you'd have to know what they were and perhaps print it out and stick it up on your bulletin board here. But that is helpful to know, like, is this a to-do? If there is a to-do, could we have it, everybody highlights it in yellow with the timeline of when it's due, that kind of thing. Those type of norming really help because then it's consistent across the organization. Things move a lot faster. The use of punctuation, smiley faces, exclamation points, though for some people they're like, oh my gosh, it's a 2 exclamation point sentence. The research is really clear. It actually makes a difference because we're being over demonstrative because we are in a remote environment and only reading things, in text. Instant messaging. So this is, Slack or Teams or whatever your organization is using, tends to be for more casual chatting, more like, hey, I'm just checking in on this, quick replies. It might have you might think about using more shorthand like NP, no problem, that kind of thing. But again, a standard acronym list so that people are all kind of speaking the same language is something to consider. Now, when we think about our video meetings, who should be there versus who's a bonus to be there? How long should the meetings be? Does every meeting need to be an hour? Probably not. What are the camera protocols? Are we on camera for these? Are we not on camera? And how does that feel? And how do we avoid the multitasking piece? So shortening those with clear expectations can make a huge difference. And then this idea, am I on mute because I am multitasking? I don't want people to know that I'm typey, or am I on mute because I have a dog who barks constantly? And is that okay? Like, what is our culture for that? It's oftentimes loud in people's space, and so mute is expected. But then what's my participation norm when I would like to say something? Am I raising my hand? Am I using the chat? All of that. And then this idea of auditing. What's working? So let's figure out what is working, what's not, and then make changes. Make the changes when you're getting the feedback that says, hey, this didn't really go well for me, and let me tell you why. These are some of these I've sort of covered. But look at all the P's here. Purpose, participants, probable issues. So you're thinking ahead of concerns that could arise in a meeting. What is the product that we're producing at the end of a meeting? And let's say that at the beginning so that we know if we've met that at the end, instead of just a meeting to meet. And then what are the steps to achieve the goal for that particular meeting? And again, condensed can be better. 20-minute meetings, you can get a lot done, and people are less likely to meander off with their brain if it's all of these things are tight and succinct. The other thing to think about is, could there be open office hours? So drop-in sort of times when you want to ask other questions, or if it's a personal story, right? If it's a one-off situation, rather than the entire group listening to the one-off situation that poor Kelly Stewart has gone through, perhaps that could be done in an open office hour when I drop in and I'm just talking to whoever I need to during that time. And if other people hear, it's not private information. It's just that it doesn't have to take the full group's meeting time. So again, setting up what is the culture for meetings in the organization that's remote. Dhawan talks about these 4 laws of digital body language. And again, I'm giving you the very short version of all of this research. But the idea of value visibly, communicate carefully, collaborate confidently, and trust totally. And it's really this idea that we are assuming best intent with my facial expressions in meetings, assuming best intent with the emails that I'm sending, the responses that you're getting back from each other. And that I trust the organization, I trust my colleagues, I trust my leaders, that I'm willing to take risks, I'm willing to ask questions. One of the signs of not a trusting organization is when if people are posting anonymously all the time, if all questions are anonymous, that's a sign that things are not in a trusting space. And so it's just like it's like an alert that says, hey, we probably want to look at this, like what's happening and how can we develop? And again, the marbles in the jar don't get filled overnight, right? That's going to take time and intent. And people have to honor their word. So if we are collectively agreeing that we don't want, we're going to avoid last minute requests, then actions have to follow that. Even more important when you are remote is being very, very careful with what you say in an email, because every word is scrutinized. And then this, I think many of us have experienced, every time that those boundaries are crossed, people are starting to get weary and burn out, especially with the amount of change that many organizations have been going through. And you can set this up in any team that you are in. You can set up what are your own boundary and communication norms in your small groups, in your subcommittees. It doesn't have to be done by the top of the organization. Every single opportunity that you have to meet, you can reset these. And then you fix them if they're not working. Now, thinking about the specific people that you work with, there are people who consider themselves introverts and processors. Like they need the time to think. So scheduling downtime between meetings is so important for all of us, honestly, but even more important for people who need more time to process. Wait time, right? It's hard when you're the only square talking. Wait time is even more challenging. One of the strategies is to count your teeth with your tongue. So you literally move your tongue across the top of each of your teeth, because then by the time you get your top teeth done, that's a good amount of wait time. And that, I mean, even in the classroom, that was the strategy. Sending questions or topics ahead, so front loading of information, allowing email messages after the topic, giving people time to process something later, using hand raising signals, and limiting time for speakers so that there's more equality. 2 types of trust: competence and motive. If you've had to send 2 emails on your topic, you might want to jump on a phone. I know many of us do not like phone calls, and we certainly do not like phone calls without a text ahead to say why the phone call is coming. But oftentimes a phone call can clear up a lot, or a quick jump on Zoom. Digital meetings are more intense than your face-to-face casual conversations because they are hyper-focused on a screen. So anything that we can do to really think about the fatigue that is generated with back-to-back meetings, again, shortening those, providing coverage, does everyone need to be here? Subgroups to discuss some of the topics can make a huge difference. In the research, there's also gender differences in communication, generational, regional, and cultural differences. You know, how even some of the y'alls that come from our Texas friends versus our East Coast, New York, more direct friends, like all of that is in the research as well. So what does trust and look and sound like in work cultures? When your boss sends a calendar invite without context, you don't get anxious. When all employees are active in the chat with their facial expressions, their hand gestures, they're chatting. When people are speaking up, giving different opinions. When you feel like all voices are being heard in the room, there's positive intent. There's not this, oh, what did that mean? Leaders are asking the questions, is this working? What's not going well? What should we be adjusting? Created virtual water cooler conversations, protocols, norms, time, task, purpose, clarity, and using data from surveys and feedback to make changes. Using verbal cues that you're listening, sending out the agreements, sending out the notes afterwards, and setting up those opportunities if something is confusing or somebody seems off, that you're checking in with them. So I'm going to keep clicking through these, but you'll have this strategies. So we have had hard situations. We've had a lot of change, and the idea of not just powering through, but really looking at how we can make system shifts to enhance trust and connection, no matter whether we're remote. So I know we're right at time. If you would do me a favor and type in the chat an action or a strategy that you would like to try as your ticket out the door, would be awesome. An action or strategy you would want to try, and go ahead and waterfall that. Transparency, trust, appreciation, and being. water falling. Yeah, I think the norm setting, I think can make a huge difference, and we can keep trying different norms. Appreciation of time, yeah, being conscious of your face. The books, read the books, they're great. Yes, and we can adjust these norms. Yes, a digital body language is a book study. All right, let me peek. Thank you, everybody. Here's the books, and again, we can I can send this all out as well, and some articles, a bunch of articles. I'm gonna stop sharing because I know we're right at time.
Wow, that was amazing. The chat is going crazy. Thank you so much, Dr. Olson Stewart, and thank you to the audience for your participation in today's session. Please use the survey linked in the chat to nominate TLC presentations for conference awards and share your feedback in this presentation.